everyone, this is Shamika and that's my husband Ishti, and the cat who's here is the majestic ruler of our house, Rinki. She is slapping you with her tail, so she really does not want to be here.
Yeah, but okay.
Okay, yeah, that's
That's
her
our
fault.
cue to let her go.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Do you want to talk about your gloves?
Oh yeah, these gloves we procured them from Winners just for the purpose of grabbing Rinki because she doesn't like being picked up and she will often scratch you. But yeah, welcome to the second episode of Career Cats. You've already met the cat, and yeah. So Dr. Shamika, what do you wanna talk about today?
Well, I want to first start off by asking, how's your Sunday going? How has your day been going so far?
Pretty good. There's some type of marathon in Vancouver today. Everyone's in like a festive mood. People are cheering on their friends who are running in the marathon. It's a beautiful summer day. Like yeah.
Absolutely. So if you hear any noise outside, that would be all the people who are running and all of their supporters, people who are joining them with like posters and, bottles of water and other things just to cheer them on and to support them. So this is one of Vancouver's scenic marathons. So it's about 42.2 kilometers, which is a full marathon, I believe, and then a fast 21.1 kilometers, which would be the half marathon, and then there's an 8-kilometer one. And it's called the scenic marathon because it crosses through English Bay as well as Stanley Park. Those are wonderful areas. You get to see the ocean, you get to enjoy the mountains, you get to enjoy the glistening sunrise and the sun hitting the water. So it's a beautiful route to kind of run across, and Vancouver in of itself is really beautiful because even if you live in the in the city, the outskirts are all mountains and you can see like trees and then
100%,
the
yeah.
ocean.
100%. This reminds me of this funny comment I found on one of the job search or career advice subreddits, where a Redditor was commenting that, oh, everything's so expensive. How do I manage in Toronto? Shall I move to Vancouver? Will it be cheaper, etc., etc.? And then somebody else commented like, Toronto is financially effed and Vancouver is financially effed, but with mountains. So both cities are pretty expensive. Toronto does have more job opportunities compared to Vancouver, but yeah, expense-wise, they're pretty much the same, I think. But in Vancouver, at least you have this scenic view of mountains.
Right.
But on to some career stuff. Today I want to talk about how to get the recruiter or the hiring manager's attention while you're on the hunt, right? Because these days, as we can see if you browse LinkedIn, you will see there's like tons of layoffs happening. People are posting that, hey, I got laid off, haven't been able to find a job for a month, for a year and a half, all those things. It's pretty bad out there, but it's still not impossible to get interviews, especially if you haven't tried messaging the recruiter or the hiring manager. So sometimes the hiring manager doesn't even look at the resumes, they will look at whatever the recruiter has filtered for them. So if you can bypass the recruiter somehow, and this works well especially in tech, where you build a project and somehow you can get in touch with the hiring manager. And this is also supported by this guy who works at OpenAI. He handles the Sora project, the video generation project in OpenAI. And he was a Swedish kid, high school dropout, but he somehow managed to get a job at OpenAI, and also he has the O1 Alien of Extraordinary Ability visa.
For the US?
Yeah, for the US. So he migrated from Sweden to US. He's a high school dropout, and all he ever did was just created a project, emailed it directly to the hiring manager. Now emails are pretty easy to find. Like you can try their first name and then company, or first name dot last name. So each company, usually Claude or Grok can help you out the email naming conventions for that company, and you can directly message the hiring manager with projects you've done. That's one way of getting their attention. Another way, if you can afford LinkedIn Premium, you will get like 5 in-mails. Use those 5 in-mails wisely. I got my current job by using in-mail because I didn't know who the hiring manager was. I directly messaged the recruiter, and I believe that got her attention out of the 1,000+ resumes she's probably already gotten, because the job was open in the States, also open in Canada, so she was getting applications from not just Canada, from US as well. So getting shortlisted from such a large applicant pool comprising of 2 countries, I don't think if I hadn't messaged the recruiter personally, I would have gotten their attention, because there's just so many great candidates. So this is a great way. Message the recruiter or the hiring manager on LinkedIn Premium in mail. If that option is not available to you, try emailing directly. Ask Grok or Claude what their email address might be based on their first and last name. So these are some things that will give you a head start when it comes to landing interviews.
Okay, and so you would suggest sending emails as well as sending messages through LinkedIn, getting in touch with let's say the recruiter of the company, or even the manager and the CEO. So anybody essentially who is part of the company that you want to either work in or be a part of?
Yeah, 100%. And a lot of the times, even let's say you're applying and it feels like your resume is going into the void, no one ever replies. A lot of the times, if you follow up with the hiring manager, hey, I applied but didn't hear back, but I feel like I'm a really strong candidate because I built this project that is very similar, that took very similar skill sets than the one you were looking for. I mean, because you've already got the rejection or you haven't heard back, you've already been semi-ghosted. So in that situation, you really have nothing to lose. An extra email can really get your foot in the door. And another thing I would like to emphasize is, even if you get a rejection, you made it to the last round, you didn't land the job, it's still probably a good idea to maintain a good relationship with the recruiter, because this has happened to me personally in the past, where I didn't land the job, but I was like, I was really respectful towards the recruiter, very friendly, made them feel like, hey, I know it's your job to deliver bad news, so don't feel bad, everything's great, I'm sure I'll land something soon. So if you maintain a good relationship with them, eventually there's a good chance, this has happened to me not once but twice, that the position opened up again, or a new position opened up, and they have recommended me again for another different position in that company, or the same position where the first recruit didn't work out, for example. So yeah, maintaining good relationship with recruiters always helps. Especially there's companies like Jarvis, SI Systems, where they're literally accepting candidates through their portal, and they have a financial incentive to place you in a job because they get a cut of your first salary. I mean, you'll get paid your full salary, but a percentage of that is there. That's how the industry operates. They'll get a percentage based on what your deal is, whether you're a contractor, whether you're a full-timer. And if you've only been applying to full-time jobs, also look into contracting, because in this climate, it's more, everybody's employers are playing it safe, so they're more keen on a low-risk hire, which is contract, as opposed to a full-time role. So if you're ignoring contracts, check out the agencies I just named, Jarvis, SI Systems, and if you're in other city like New York, SF, they will have their own agencies as well.
We can put the names also in the link below as well for you to check. So
for sure.
You will find those names and also essential links that will guide you to some of those websites. So we can
check the description of the video. I'll definitely put some agency links for you to check out. But now that we've covered like generic or rather tech-focused career advice, what about academia?
Well, in academia, today what I wanted to talk about was how to get some of those PhD chapters in. And I know that PhD is a very long journey. It is colossal in more ways than one. So I wanted to talk about how to get some of those chapters in, and what some of the edits would look like that you will get from your PhD supervisory committee members, and how to kind of handle each project, or like each chapter rather, one by one, in order to then have your end product. So that's what I wanted to kind of talk about. But I did have one question for you, Ishti, as you were talking about this. Do you think tailoring your resume in a way that speaks to what a company is looking for is essential, which it's a rhetorical question because yes, absolutely. But a lot of people do not have the time to do that because they're either working on certain projects or they're working a job or they might have family members to take care of or there might be other commitments like, adulting, doing chores, cooking and cleaning. So all of those things also come in. So in that scenario, what would you go about saying and what would your advice be to people in order to have a resume tailored to a particular job? Because in that way, one would have multiple resumes and then they would have to work on them.
So, I mean, yeah, tailoring resume, it's first of all the time. It takes, sometimes it could take, like when I was doing it manually initially, it took me like sometimes it took me 30 minutes. And other times it would take me almost like 45 minutes. And it's not just the fact that it's time consuming, it's also like it weighs heavy on your psyche, because I'm like, while I was tailoring I would also ask like, what if it's a fake job posting, what if it's a ghost job, this data analyst position has been open for 6 months, 1 year, I'm wasting 30-45 minutes tailoring while I could be applying for other jobs in that time, right? Especially when I have like a target date. If I don't get a job by this date, I'll be like in a really dire position because my savings are running out, etc. So all those factors into consideration, I built myself a solution called Resumehog. It's live right now on resumehog.com. And what I do is I upload my base resume, I paste the job description, and I just click generate. And on the other end, a beautiful resume comes out tailored perfectly to the job, and it takes under 2 minutes. So that's one way I basically deal with it. So, and Resumehog is really popular now. Like so far, I think it's generated 4,000 plus resumes for almost 1,500 users.
I've used it too.
Yeah, you've used it too, and you've gotten an interview at OpenAI as well.
I've got interviews, yes. Yeah. So it works.
So OpenAI what was the position again?
I think it was a research analyst or a research associate. It's been a while, but yes, I did get an interview with OpenAI and also another company from what I remember.
Yeah, because they were looking. These AI companies are always looking for highly skilled professionals in their own respective fields with PhDs, and they often pay anywhere between like $40 to $250 an hour, like for some financial experts or like some very niche like biotech roles where you have a PhD, then you can apply to those roles and they pay fairly great. But those are always like usually like a 3-month to 4-month gig, and the amount of work you're gonna get is also uncertain. 1 week could be full 40 hours, another week it could be 20 hours, another week could be blank, and layoffs could happen at any time. So if you're pursuing like an AI tutor role, Micro One, and a bunch of other companies, Scale AI, XAI are always hiring.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but go back to your PhD chapters, and you kind of digressed to resume tailoring. Let's go back to that.
Yeah, because I was so curious with what you were saying. I was like, I want to learn more.
Let's go back to the PhD chapters, and how do you do that?
Absolutely. I've had a lot of colleagues who were emailing me, and we were talking about our PhDs and kind of looking back at the time that we spent as doctoral students. And I think many of us were saying that if we didn't take the project chunk by chunk or bit by bit, then I don't think we would have been able to finish, because it's such a colossal project that you get easily overwhelmed. So that's kind of what I want to talk to you about, and that's a note on which I wanted to start off. And before I talk about this, I wanted to let you know that everybody's PhD journeys are unique. they're different, their projects are different, so the way in which that they're going to approach their chapters and their project and their research is going to be unique to them and their field and the conversations that they wish to bring to the forefront. So that is extremely important to remember, that what I'm saying here are merely suggestions. Do take what works for you, but if you feel like there's something that won't quite fit with maybe your version or your trajectory of research, then feel free to leave it behind as well. And while I give some of these suggestions, they could also be used for master's students or students who are looking to enter into the PhD field, or even colleagues who are already pursuing their PhD and who would maybe like a little bit of bouncing back and forth of ideas as well. So one of the first things that I did after I got qualified to write my PhD dissertation, after my proposal was accepted, was I did a quick, well, it wasn't a quick, it was a pretty rigorous field survey. So what that means is that when you're entering into a particular field or stream, whether that be post-colonial studies or gender studies, or even like a combination of some of these fields like trauma studies, memory, or masculinity studies, which again falls within sort of a branch of gender studies as well, or feminist studies. So anything that you think your focus would be for your work and for your research, what I would do is I did a quick field survey. So for me, my project was on the 1971 Bangladesh Liberation War, and at the start I did not have a fully formulated argument that I wanted to pursue. For me, it was just an idea, an initial thought, and it was from there on that I built sort of each chapter argument to then formulate and streamline what my contention would be. So the first thing I did was, in relation to the Bangladesh Liberation War, I looked at any of the critical sources that are available, and there are quite a few books and articles and studies related to women who were abducted and violated during the 1971 Liberation War. Some of the theorists would be Yasmin Saikian, Nainika Mukherjee, Bina Di Costa. So at that time, when I was starting my research, I think it was around 2017 or 2016. It's been a while. So those are the books that I started off with, just to see how they entered into the conversation about the Liberation War. Partition studies was also another aspect that I looked into, because the 1947 partition of India and Pakistan has a role to play in how why the Bangladesh Liberation War had also taken place. I thought it was important and imperative that I look into some partition theory, memory, and gender as well. So those were some of the theorists of partition studies that I pursued. So let's say Ritu Menon, Kamla Bhasin, they were very integral to my work. Ananya Jahanara Kabir, who's talked about 1947, the partition era, as well as the 1971 Bangladesh Liberation War. And I also looked at Veena Das, Urvashi Putalia. A lot of these feminist studies as well have been on partition literature, women's stories, as well as men's stories. And post-colonial studies was another important field, because I did my master's in post-colonial literary and cultural studies. I had some research and already sort of some understanding of the main post-colonial theorists and how to kind of build off of that. So I revisited some of those theorists like Gayatri Chakraborty Spivak, Edward Said as well, Homi Bhabha. All of these theorists were also integral to the work that I did and my final piece, which was my PhD dissertation. And so that's kind of what I did. I tried to kind of pinpoint which fields would be important to my work, and I did a thorough reading, research, and sort of literature review of sort of the theorists and researchers that are needed as a way to familiarize myself and to get a better, stronger, and more confident understanding of what the field is, and to see how I can then enter into conversation. Now, so once I was kind of done with that form of reading and research, what I did is I took each chapter step by step. So when I was working on my first chapter, I was just focusing on that. And even within my first chapter, I broke it down into sections. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, so my first chapter would be around, just guessing here, around maybe 10,000 words. So I'm like, okay, so I will have one section that focuses on theory, another section that focuses on sort of the fictional or narrative, another section on testimonial narratives, and another section on this. So what I would do is I would break my chapter into sections so that it's smaller and it becomes easier for me to then handle. And so that's how I would approach each chapter. So it'll be chapter by chapter, but also section by section. And each chapter would have its own argument, its own set of theorists that I would also read up on, and also its own trajectory as well. So my first chapter, which provided sort of a historical argument of why there was a certain trajectory that led to the Bangladesh Liberation War of 1971, is very, very different from, let's say, my third chapter, which focuses on women's stories and narratives. So when I'm looking at one chapter, I zero in on that, I focus on that, and I take it section by section, including the introduction and the conclusion, and then once it's done, that's when I send it off to my committee, my supervisory committee. Each university or institution has sort of their own way of assessing what the chapter looks like, and once I get feedback, I work on that. Again, maybe once working on that chapter, I might get more feedback. So with each stage, the feedback also gets a little less, but the chapter starts to become better. Now, as I'm saying this, many of you might be also thinking and noticing that this will take a long process. And yes, it is. Usually a PhD would last for about 5 years, sometimes 6 years. My one was for about 7.5 years. So the PhD in its entirety. So this does take time, so that's another aspect to consider, that okay, what does my timeline look like, when do I want to finish it by, and then what are some of the goals that I can have in order to kind of maximize the time, but also to then tell yourself that, hey, maybe I need to go into this with patience and with the understanding that I might get revisions, multiple revisions, and how to then approach that. Because sometimes the revision stages could be where you'd have to read other sources, or maybe you'd have to rethink a point or an argument that you've made, or sometimes you might have to add a paragraph or two, or a section even, to talk about something that completely got missed out. I think that happened in my third chapter, where I had to add another section in order to really, really make my argument convincing. So sometimes these revisions can be major, and they might require you to read more, to kind of rethink some of the aspects you've written, or maybe rewrite a good portion of your chapter that you've already produced. So yeah, so that is how it is. And what I would say is that, just keep that in mind when you're kind of entering into or embarking on this journey of producing your PhD. But what I would say is take it chapter by chapter, and sometimes when you're waiting on comments on one chapter, then you can also start working on the other one in the meantime. So things like, oh, I can collect data, or I can do some research, or maybe I can think of the argument or some of the analyses that I want to include in my next chapter. So what that does is that is still work, and it helps you to kind of keep pace and keep momentum, and then you're also then progressing.
Yeah, makes sense. And I think that's a secret to any colossal project. When you look at the entirety of it in one go, it seems like an impossible task. Like, for example, writing a work of fiction, which is 50,000 words, like novel length book, it seems like, oh, there's no way. But then you break it down into chapters, and then you break it down into sections. The same is true for, let's say, having a software project on the side, or having a business on the side, where it seems like, oh, this is overwhelming, there's no way I can do this. Especially when you're unemployed, you're demotivated, you're on the job search, and you're like, oh, I don't have the mental, I'm not in the right mindset to be creating a new project while searching for a job and interviewing a new, keep creating an app from scratch, for example, might feel like an impossible task. But you break it, like you do a little bit every day, 25 minutes, 50 minutes. First you create the landing page, then you create the most basic feature of that app, then some additional complementary features, then some bugs, and then you put it live on a website, on a domain, and then there's going to be some issues. Things won't work on production that worked on your laptop, but when you put it live on the App Store or on a website, it doesn't work. Then you'll debug it, and this is an iterative process. Once eventually, by 6th or 7th month, you will have a very polished product, which would previously take 4 to 6 years, but thanks to all these AI tools like Claude Code and Codex, you can actually, if you're building full time, you can actually get an MVP ready. Sometimes I know a couple of guys who can build an MVP within a single day. It won't be polished, it'll be buggy, but yeah, you can put out a really polished product within 8 weeks if you're diligent, if you plug away at it consistently. And then, for example, Resumehog itself, it was years before it made money, but the reason I kept building it, because I'm like, even if nobody uses the tool, I need it for my own job search, so I'll keep improving it for my own needs. So find a use case where you need to build something that is useful to you. Like, for example, if you want to track your expenditure, your daily expenses, especially, that's a good use case when you've been laid off and you need to be careful about spending money. So you can start with building an app that helps you keep track of your own expenses. And once you iron out the bugs, then you can put it in the App Store. And that's a really powerful signal for recruiters, for hiring managers, for potential employers, like, okay, this person can create a product end to end, put it on the App Store, he has live users, and if you can make money, then that's like even more impressive. Like, he actually built something, or she actually built something that people are paying money to use. So that's a stronger stamp of approval than any educational, let's say, Harvard degree, for example. At least in tech. In academia, obviously, credentials matter a lot. But in the industry setting, non-academic settings, your projects, your ability to build something matters a lot more than your educational qualifications. Does the kid in Sweden, I'll mention him in the description as well once I get his name after this show. He is a high school dropout, but he managed to get a job at OpenAI, one of the most coveted tech institutions. OpenAI is the new Google, really. Like OpenAI, Anthropic, these companies are the new Google, new Facebook of this generation, right? So, and he got the most sought after, one of the most a high-paying job in one of the most sought-after companies in the world. Like, it's for a tech enthusiast or someone who wants to build a career in tech, a job in OpenAI is like it's as good as it gets, really. Only thing higher would be Anthropic, in my opinion. But yeah.
And also to kind of build off of that, yes, it is true that in academia, especially if you want to get into a postdoc or a tenure track position or an instructor's position, yes, it is important to then have your PhD. But as I was said, and very early on in my PhD, and thankfully I was told this, is that having a PhD in of itself is not enough. You're also going to want to have those other projects of publishing. So make sure that one person who also has a PhD can also then show evidence that they've published in top journals or even book chapters. Usually journal articles are seen as stronger, especially those that are not quite, that doesn't really fall into the category of let's say, journals that are special issues. So if you can just even submit in a journal, let's say a top journal in your field, and then you have a few rounds of edits, and then after that, if you get it published there, then that looks really good on your profile. So there are journal articles as well as book chapters, and anything that you can get published that you've produced throughout the course of your PhD. So let's say even if you took a course in your first year of PhD that you would usually do in Canada, then if you have a research paper that you wrote as part of your coursework, then you can turn that into a journal article and submit it to a journal and see what happens. If you get a rejection, then just put it in another journal, and then it kind of goes on and on from there. If you get sort of a return and resubmit, revise and resubmit, then do that and take on that path as well. So it's important to kind of stay active in that area, as well as to present at conferences, and to also keep a teaching profile as well. There's like TA-ships, like teaching assistantships, but also in terms of teaching fellowships or other forms of instructor positions as well. So yes, the PhD is there, but there's also other aspects and components to consider.
Yeah, so in a way, in academia, it's actually harder because in an industry setting, your credentials don't matter as much. I mean, it obviously gives you a boost if you have a CS degree from Stanford, for example, just because of the networking opportunities you would have, and also the brand name. But you can also do without it, like the high school dropout from Sweden. You can have impressive projects and you can bypass all of that. But in academia, you have so the book, in this case, book or journal articles are equivalent to projects. Yeah. So you need the degree, absolutely need the degree, because you're not going to be able to become a professor without a PhD. But the PhD alone in many cases is not enough. So you need the degree, and you need the publications and the books and all the other feathers in your cap or trophies in your trophy case.
I do want to say that it's absolutely wonderful to have journals in like special issue journals, or when they have a special issue on a particular topic. Yes, absolutely, that's wonderful. But somewhere down the line, you'd also want to think about having an article in a journal that is not advertising a special issue. So you would want to kind of have a mix and match of those things. But like you were saying, yes, it is necessary on top of having the PhD degree to then have publications, whether that be in the form of journal articles or book chapters. Book reviews are also a good way of getting sort of an early start to the publication game. And a book is also another example. Lots of people publish books as well. So yeah.
100%. So that's just to recap what I discussed in this episode is when you're applying for jobs, try and find a way to get the hiring manager or the recruiter's attention. Some of the common ways are LinkedIn InMail, direct email to find their email addresses. You can get help from Grok, who will know the email patterns. And Grok is usually less restrictive about obtaining such information. Other AIs from OpenAI and Anthropic might deny you, but Grok won't, in my experience. Leverage recruitment agencies in your cities. I will share the names and websites of some of those agencies in the description. And finally, if you're mentally exhausting from manually tailoring your resume for every role, use resumehog.com. It's live and it's free to try before you get prompted to buy. You can try it twice, and that's enough to evaluate the tool. And Dr. Shamika, would you like to recap what you just said in this episode?
Absolutely. So I talked about tackling your PhD dissertation chapters specifically. So a PhD has other components like coursework and comprehensive exams. I could tackle those in another episode if you like. Let us know in the comment section below. But today I talked about how to tackle the actual dissertation, the PhD chapters that you would have that would formulate your dissertation, and how to kind of really break it down and kind of use it as a building block, as opposed to kind of thinking about what the main overarching argument would be of my dissertation. One other thing I would like to mention is that do tackle the body chapters first. So that would be, let's say if you have 3 main chapters, chapter 1, 2, and 3, and then leave the introductory chapter and the conclusion coda to the end, mostly because your introduction chapter is going to change significantly based on what your body chapters are talking about. So ensure you get those done first. And then tackle your introductory chapter. It will be easier, followed by the conclusion chapter or conclusion coda. So take it bit by bit, section by section. And I know it's easier said than done, that hey, don't think about this giant whale of a project, but see if you can kind of focus on sort of the next step, or then just a section in front of you, and then once that's done, think of the next section and what are some of the sources and ideas and analyses that can be included there in order for me to kind of push forward my argument. So that's kind of what I was talking about today. And I also discussed a little bit about how, yes, the PhD is very, very important, but in order to also, have a career in academia, there are other factors as well, and that's where your strength as a researcher comes in, where you're able to produce journal articles and book chapters and talk about all of these other aspects that might link with your dissertation, but you didn't quite have space to place in your dissertation. Sometimes people write chapters just through a footnote, or sometimes if you have a paper that you've presented at a conference, that's a really good place to get feedback in order for you to then turn that paper into a journal article or an article that you want to submit to a journal. So those are just some things to remember. Do start thinking about publishing early, because that will pay off in the long run. And yeah, that is it for me in terms of sort of the main points that I've spoken about.
One last thing I would like to add, and this applies whether you're in tech or whether you're in academia, is to have your own website where you can aggregate all your projects. If you're in academia, you want to aggregate all your publications, your upcoming books, everything. And if you're in tech, you want to aggregate all your projects under one domain. So the domain, the website kind of acts like your resume for recruiters or potential investors or people who are looking to hire or acqui-hire. So I built a tool that lets people do this very easily. It's called Porkycoder. You can download it for porkycoder.com, from porkycoder.com. And Dr. Shamika actually used it to build her own website where she has all her articles, her upcoming book link. It's no longer upcoming. I think it's already ready for purchase, right?
Yeah, so the book will be ready for pre-order this August, and it will come out and it will be released on September of 2026. So it's called Remembering the 1971 Bangladesh Liberation War, History, Memory, and Gender. And the website that Ishti has created for me and that I'm also using at this point is called shamikashabnam.com, where you will find all the details of my publications as well, both academic as well as creative, and also more information about my upcoming book.
Thanks, Dr. Shamika. I think that's all for today, and we'll see you next week for another episode of Career Cats. Take care.
Take care. Bye.